So it seems that we've got a fairly chunky and widely anticipated Warhammer 40k rules update. There's the 4 rules for the new Deathwatch and the Necrons kill teams, 1 core change to movement rules, and full datasheets and points for the White Scars, Iron Hands and more. Let's take a look at what we've got. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about Games Workshop's latest Warhammer 40k digital update. And as mentioned, this one's been a fair bit of time coming. We've been anticipating rules for Deathwatch and Necrons for quite some time, and there's been lots of other outstanding stuff, and this one's weird for a few reasons as well. It seems that for the update of this one, Games Workshop has put most of the updates in the new faction packs, though for whatever reason they seem to have had some trouble, and quite a bit of the new stuff that looked like it was supposed to come out today in the digital downloads on the Warhammer 40k page have actually only appeared in the app. So if you go to the downloads, there's quite a lot of stuff that's missing, most notably the Necron updates, but also really quite a big Drukhari FAQ that allows you to add in Harlequins once again. To go through the rules bit by bit, from the downloads we've got 1 core rules change, a small but pretty important change to stop you doing double reactive moves. For the Space Marines they've got a small FAQ to Land Raider keywords, and then the new datasheets for Suboden Khan and Caanok Var, the points cost for those, and the unique White Scars and Iron Hands detachments now available for everyone to play. Then we've got the new kill team rules. The Deathwatch finally get rules for their new kill team box. In the actual Deathwatch index, it's called the Decimus kill team, and it seems that so far they haven't retired the standard Deathwatch veterans kill team, and there's also a version for the new guys and the Imperial agents as well. That one called the Aquila kill team, though having fairly similar rules. The Munitor and Field Manual's been updated with the new points cost for those characters and detachment enhancements and the kill teams. We've got combat patrol rules for the Iron Hands and White Scars to download, and then a bunch of mysterious sort of faction pack updates. Really quite a lot of armies have been listed as updated, but didn't list what they actually changed in their changelog style thing. I guess a few of these might be small misprints or errors in the creation of the faction packs, things that have been transcribed across wrong. So if you see anything that's particularly important that's changed in those updates, then feel free to let us know down in the comments. Then, as mentioned, it looks like the downloads page and the Warhammer app are currently out of sync, which is really not helpful. There's supposed to be 2 rule sources that show the same thing, and you really wouldn't want to be questioning which one of these is legitimate and which one is not. But for this update, it looks like there's some things that have appeared on the app that haven't been released elsewhere. In particular, the Geomancer kill team rules for the Necrons. They've been kind of surprisingly split into 3 different datasheets, all of which can just completely go their own way if they want to. Then there's that small but impactful Drukhari Errata, which seems to be on the app only at this point. That allows you to add regular allied Harlequins and Corsairs back into every Drukhari detachment, so quite a big deal for collectors who have allied forces. And for some reason, the new Harlequins Combat Patrol box set has a Combat Patrol rules listing in the app only, but not on the downloads page. Still, by putting everything together though, we have a whole bunch of the digital updates that we knew were coming. The main thing that isn't here at this is there's no Ultramarine updates for the new characters that are coming out this weekend, nor their unique detachment, presuming they get one. I guess they might well be teased by their sanctioned content creators and arrive for download in around about 2 weeks' time or so. Let's go through those bits one by one though, and as mentioned they made 1 small core rule change to Warhammer 40k that does have the potential to affect multiple factions. It's a new rule added to the designer's commentary, and it basically says a unit cannot make more than 1 normal move per phase. This one's not going to be all that relevant besides armies that can stack multiple copies of that. Perhaps one of the most common ways in which you could get more than 1 normal move per phase would be if you had a datasheet rule that allowed you to do a reactive normal move if the enemy moves close to you, and then you had a stratagem that could allow you to do the same. Perhaps the Space Marine Combi Weapon Lieutenant, say in the Gladius Task Force or Stormlands, where you might be able to get a reactive normal move twice in 1 enemy movement phase. Doing that sort of thing could potentially make a unit just ridiculously hard to catch up with. You can defend them with the first normal move and then maybe defend them again with the second. It maybe did feel a bit weird and unintended when you have multiple copies of stacking rules like this, and I feel like having it to 1 use per phase is pretty reasonable really. It's kind of rare that you would trigger it multiple times, but could maybe have an outsized impact at the top level of play, and these abilities are still super powerful even if just left as they are with 1 activation. It's still very hard to catch up with that Combi Lieutenant if it's going to be scooting away 6 inches with lone operative protection, never mind having the threats to do it again. For the new kill teams, I thought we'd take a quick look at the rules now. I might follow up in some more dedicated videos to them over the next 24 hours or so. But first up for the Deathwatch we have the Decimus kill team. So basically their new Primaris kill team where you get 5 models per half of the squad. 1 guy is a Gravis guy and 1 guy is a Phobos guy. And most of the models just have 2 alternative build options. The points cost for the new guys are either 100 points for 5 of them or 200 for 10. So slightly pricier than the Fortis kill team or pricier than the veterans for the big squad. And as mentioned, it looks like they didn't move the standard Deathwatch veterans to Legends just yet. I'd guess they will go there in time. I guess they're either surviving, sort of similar to how they did with the Chaos Demons, where the digital codex hasn't had their out-of-production models taken down yet, or it might be due to them being imprint in Codex Imperial agents, where they don't usually tend to Legends units that are literally imprint in a codex. For whatever reason, you'll have the choice of both of them. They've got standard Space Marine stat lines with 2 wounds and OC2, and their battle line as well, so you can field quite a lot of them. The Gravis Marine has 3 wounds, but does mean that the squad might be a little slower as he moves 5 inches where they move 6. He might be lagging behind a bit in the movement phase. They get the same special rule as the Deathwatch veterans, re-rolling hit rolls of 1 or all hit rolls against Xenos units, and then as expected by the model kits, they have an absolutely enormous roster of options, and they are locked per 1 model build in the box set. I might go through the weapons a bit more in a dedicated video. Most of them are at least fairly similar to what came before, maybe the Heavy Thunderhammer being a bit of a star of the box. Strength 10 and damage 3 devastating wounds in melee is rather nice. It looks like this datasheet upguns the Infernus Heavy Bolter with a Deathwatch Heavy Bolter style profile with strength 5 and AP 2 damage 3, and you have the choice between that or the frag cannon on the Gravis armoured operative. The unit construction page is rather intense. Either 5 or 10 models, you only get 1 sergeant per team of course, and then it's either 1 or 2 Gravis Marines depending on the smaller or bigger squad. The sergeant gets plasma pistol and power weapon, and a fairly punchy power weapon profile with damage 2 on it and sustained hits 1, which is rather nice. And if you expand to a squad of 10 models, only then do you use the sergeant multi-build with the guy with the Xenophase Blaze, though weirdly enough there doesn't seem to be a profile for it on the datasheet. I don't know if he's supposed to share the profile with the sergeant's power weapon. Overall they do look a fairly dangerous little unit. You could have a frag cannon or Infernus Heavy Bolter, one with a plasma incinerator, one with a Heavy Thunderhammer, and one with a damage 2 power weapon all within the same unit. So quite good threat both at range and melee, and they can be joined by characters that can attach to a Fortis kill team, so that would allow most of the Primaris ones and also the Watchmaster. Then the Imperial agents also get their own datasheet for that, and the points cost is either 100 or 200 points, both if you field them in pure agents or any other Imperial army, so you can use these as full allies. These ones are called the Aquila kill team, and mostly have the same sort of profiles. For some reason the Infernus Heavy Bolter's bolt profile isn't quite as punchy here. They get the same special rule, but also an expanded transport option, saying the Gravis Veteran model takes up 2 slots in this one, but doesn't otherwise prevent the squad from embarking in other transports. Certainly could be of interest to people who want to field the new models alongside the various Imperial armies out there. I'd guess as allied agents without good supporting rules, they're probably unlikely to be super competitive. They'll definitely have a whole bunch of fun factor, and I don't think would be useless with their damage profiles for 100 points. Before we move on to Necrons, Drukhari and other Space Marines, I'll just give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor in ObjectiveMarkers.com, makers of gaming accessories based in the UK. Their primary product, unsurprisingly, is faction-themed objective markers, basically clear flat silicon mats with a little bit of faction iconography on them that you can use to represent objectives on the tabletop in Warhammer 40K. The central disc is the right size for a 40mm objective, and then the rest of the disc is basically a 3-inch scoring zone, so at a glance you can tell whether or not any miniatures on the table are within range of that objective or not. I've seen various different versions of them. I think these ones are quite fun because they're clear, and it means that you can see the battlefield and playing surface through them, so not detracting too much from that. They've got several new designs recently, ones that could be nice for Space Elves, or very holy warrior nuns in power armour, or the forces of the greater good out there, all of which could add a bit of faction flair. They have a channel merch Auspex design that's faction agnostic, any sales of that one help to support the channel a little. And then have a vast amount of other designs for other factions out there. Their usual prices are £30 or $42 for 6 of these, free shipping within the UK and on larger orders elsewhere I believe. Feel free to take a look over their designs, they do have a fair amount of them, links down in the video description below. They do have a fair few of the factions covered now. They've got some terrain-based templates as well, if you have any interest in that. And thanks to them for sponsoring this one, you can check them out, links down in the video description. Getting back to the 40k updates though, and first up we have the Necrons. As mentioned, these ones don't seem to have gone live on the actual downloads at time of recording, though we have the details from the Warhammer 40k app. I was wondering exactly how they'd split this out. I was guessing maybe the Geomancer might be separate to his retinue, but it seems that in fact they've decided to split their kill team into not 1 but 3 different datasheets, one for the character, one for the macrosites, and one for the tomb crawlers. The Geomancer is 75 points, and it seems to be a regular Cryptek style model that can lead the macrosite retinue, or immortals or warriors. If you join macrosites then they can scout 8 inches like they can. The profile's a fairly standard Cryptek one, 4 wounds at toughness 4 with a 4+ save, though moves a little faster with an 8-inch move on that scuttling sort of centipede-like body. Have a damage output, they attack with a tremor glaive, 2 shots at strength 8, AP 2 and damage 2 at range, then melter 2 if you get within 9 inches. Potentially could fry a few standard Space Marines or maybe a Terminator at close range, or getting a slightly boosted flamer attack, D6 plus 2 torrent hits at 18 inches, at strength 4, AP 0 and damage 1 with ignores cover and torrent. Then in melee, Crypteks generally don't do too much here, but they have 2 attacks at strength 8, AP 2 and damage 2. For special rules, you get tectonic reverberations. In your movement phase, you can select an enemy unit within 18 inches. At least one model must be visible to the Cryptek, and until the start of the next movement phase, the enemy unit is pinned, while pinned subtract 2 from the move characteristic and 2 from charge rolls. There is quite a powerful debuff ability, and can genuinely keep some melee things out of the game, though a bit less impactful given that you have to get quite so close to them. At least for faster moving enemies, there's a pretty reasonable chance they might still be able to charge you at that range. I guess it's quite nice that it's not restricted to just infantry or something though, it can affect anything. The other special rule is Deep Strike Denial, something that Necrons didn't have at 12 inches before. The rule is called Obelisk Control Node, and it means that you can't arrive from reserves within 12 inches of the model. If you really wanted, you could just have that guard in the home field if you'd like to, potentially with a Geomancer not attached to anything. Maybe in Awakened Dynasty, you could just resurrect the model if it gets shot down. Overall, I feel like it's got 2 interesting rules, though bundled together on a 75-point model that doesn't do too much damage. I'm a bit skeptical. I'd be kind of surprised to see the Geomancer get too much play in competitive lists until the points go down a bit. Feels like if anything it's going to be a high-end tech piece for more competitive games, as opposed to being quite so useful in more casual environments. Next up, for the first of the 2 retinues, we have the Canoptek Macrosites. These are 85 points, and you get 5 models here, and 5 really quite flimsy models. They're only 1 wound at toughness 3 with a 4+ save, so really quite easy to wipe a squad out for that small points cost. They move 8 inches, and they can scout up the board 8 inches, so it could be another unit to have a bit more presence in the mid-board, along with the flayed ones perhaps, presuming you do want to get close to the enemy in the first place. For their war gear choices, their base loadout is for each of them getting either a Tesla caster or a Gauss scalpel. They're one-shot guns that hit on a 4+. The Gauss one is strength 4, AP -1 and lethal hits. The Tesla caster strength 5, AP 0 with assault and sustained hits 1, neither of which really going to do all that much to enemy infantry. Then for one of them it seems like a no-brainer to upgrade one to the Atomizer Beam. It's shorter range but strength 6 and AP 1, and you get a Nanoscarab projector included with that, once per battle round boosting a reanimation by 1 additional wound, which seems easily worth having for the side grade on the gun. Then one can replace its weapon with an Accelerator Mandible, this guy pictured here I suppose, and this one's actually a bit more of a serious buff. One Canoptek unit within 3 inches in the fight phase gets +1 weapon skill, so you could make these guys hit a bit more accurately. The base profile isn't crazy though, just 2 attacks each at strength 4, AP 1 and damage 1 with those claws. It'd be far more impactful to put that on a different Canoptek unit, potentially Wraiths will quite enjoy that. They could get native hitting on a 3+, and that means that could stack with say Awakened Dynasty, so you could have Wraiths hitting on a 2+ if these guys are around. It does seem a bit clunky to be able to coordinate with a unit though, given that these guys would actually have to be within 3 inches in the fight phase, and that presumes the Wraiths have charged already, so they might well find themselves out of that very short range. Then finally their last special rule is Harassment Swarm. Enemy units besides monsters and vehicles within 3 inches are -1 to hit. Again, not unhelpful for that one, but given it's on some really quite flimsy and easy to clear models, it's not really going to either save them, nor necessarily hang around for too long, while the opponent's trying to make attacks on other things. Again, I feel like these guys have got some interesting abilities, but for 85 points cost, that seems like a lot. In particular, they're just incredibly fragile for the cost. Just 1 wound at toughness 3 and a 4+ save. For 5 models that cost almost 100 points is going to get cleared out by small arms super fast, and most of their special rules aren't exactly super exciting unless they're right on the front line near things in close combat. Then finally we have the Tomb Crawlers. They're 50 points for a set of 2 of them. And it seems that these guys are being treated as a sort of Crypto Thrall alternative, attaching to a unit alongside a Cryptek in the same sort of way. You can't double up, so a Cryptek would either have to go with 2 of these or with 2 Crypto Thralls. You can't have both, and you can't have multiple units within the same squad. It basically makes for a bulkier Necron unit to give you more models to reanimate within the squad. Not too bad given that they're 3 wounds, and they also confer a special rule as well. For their stat lines, they are a little slow, moving 5 inches with toughness 4, a 3+ save, and 3 wounds apiece. It means that say if people were firing small arms at warriors, they might be a pretty reasonable choice to tank some shots on, given their higher saving throw. Then for their ranged weapons, unfortunately they're not really all that dangerous. They can both take the Twin Gauss Reaper, that's basically what you'd expect from the warrior profile, 2 shots at 12 inches, hitting on a 4, at strength 4, AP 1, damage 1, with lethal hits, and getting twin links to reroll wound rolls. One of the 2 can replace with a transdimensional isolator. This one's got the same range, 2 attacks at 12 inches, strength 4, AP 2, and damage 2, and that seems well worth the upgrade over the twin links being able to threaten some Space Marines or something. Then in melee they have a fair few attacks, 4 attacks at strength 6, AP 1 and damage 1, and perhaps surprisingly seem like they're more of a threat in melee compared with at range for some reason. Then they have their special rule, which means that you get to ignore any or all modifiers with ranged attacks when you're shooting at enemies within 12 inches. That both would apply to them and any other units that they join. They can join anything that has a crypt tech in it, so it means that you could put them in warriors, immortals, wraiths, or the macrosites. It feels like on paper they might well pair best with the Necron warriors. They're going to be shooting within 12-inch range normally and might care about that buff. Plus just adds to the overall chunkiness of the unit for making the opponent struggle to clear them out before they ping back closer to their starting squad size. People do get good use out of the Cryptothralls, and they feel like they're an okay alternative to that. I wouldn't be too surprised to see a few people using these in their reanimation-centric blocks. In any case, nice to finally have the Necrons rules out there. Hopefully Games Workshop actually get around to releasing them as downloads sometime soon though. Next up, we've got some errata for the Drukhari, and again this seems to have appeared in the Warhammer 40K app, but not their faction pack, where you might expect to find their errata cropping up eventually. This one's quite a big deal for Drukhari players, as it basically puts a rule back in that was kind of removed by the dawn of their codex, and it basically allows Drukhari to field Corsairs and travelling players in every detachment once again, taking up to a quarter of your army's point value in either Harlequin or Corsairs datasheets from Codex Eldari. They had this in their index that was kind of rarely made use of in any sort of optimised lists, at least outside of the Reaper's Wager where the Harlequins can actually get benefits. It feels like the sort of rule that if it was intended to be in the codex it probably should have been printed there, as otherwise we've had a good few weeks of Drukhari players thinking that they can only field Harlequins in that one detachment, where apparently it's going to be the same as normal. I feel like it's quite a nice one to add in though, maybe not necessarily going to be super competitive to put Harlequins in, though I guess it does allow Drukhari players access to lone operatives in the army like the Solitaire or the Death Jester, and quite nice for fun thematic list builds if your Drukhari raiding party is being joined by a band of Harlequins, rather than having them as a major allied force. Otherwise it looks like the only main errata bit is the Venom rule being changed slightly. They've changed the wording in quite a big way, though it feels like the single biggest and most impactful change is that you can't get back into a Venom if you are locked in melee, but otherwise it's still the same jump back in if your unit can get in at the end of either player's fight phase, potentially quite nice for keeping units safe in the right situation after they've charged in and wiped out an enemy unit. Next up we have the Space Marine changes. It seems they also got a small FAQ, adding the Land Raider keywords to the Land Raider Crusader and Redeemer, plus also the Black Templar one in their errata. This one feels like a kind of common sense one that I'm sure most people were playing normally anyway. I'm guessing the reason they added in these Land Raider keywords is due to a stratagem in the Black Templar's Godhammer detachment that has a couple of things that reference the Land Raider keyword, which technically would only apply to the core Godhammer Land Raider with the las cannons, if you're being super pedantic about rules as written. I guess sensible enough to patch it so there's no doubt though. Otherwise for the Space Marines we now finally have the datasheets for Suboden Khan and Caanok Var. We knew their rules as of a couple of weeks ago, given that Games Workshop gave early previews to their affiliate content creators, but quite nice to actually see the datasheets written out in full to clarify any areas that they were vague about. Suboden Khan is the White Scar's jetbike character. He moves 12 inches and is toughness 5 with 8 wounds. Shoots with a fairly normal profile onslaught Gatling cannon, so 8 shots with devastating wounds, and attacks with Stormtooth in melee. A lance profile with 6 attacks at strength 6, AP 2 and damage 2, with both lance and anti-monster and anti-vehicle 4+. He can also strike with a power sword against hordes, and both of those profiles will be looking a fair bit scarier if they're buffed by an Outrider squad, as he'll be able to make use of their rule for +1 strength and +1 damage on the charge, so potentially damage 3 with Stormtooth or damage 2 and strength 6 with that power sword. It does appear that despite being on a jet bike, he does not have the fly keyword, perhaps in a similar way to the Space Marine grav tanks that don't get it. Maybe it just more slinks along the ground. And then for his special rules, they both help him deliver his squad into melee from enormous distances, advanced shoot and charge and fallback shoot and charge, so he gets to keep on blazing away with that onslaught Gatling cannon as they get to their targets. If you have both of those rules, you also +1 to advance and charge, which you might rarely be able to do, though only accessing it with a stratagem. Otherwise, Skilled Riders means that you get to move horizontally through terrain features, and that's really quite big for staging Outriders. You can have him and a squad hiding in the ground floor of a ruin, safe from enemy fire, and then strike out an absolutely enormous distance, advancing and charging. There's not going to be too much that'll stop this guy from getting the first strike on the enemy. Overall, he feels like a pretty solid and scary White Scars datasheets, some pretty powerful damage threats at a good movement. The White Scars also get their boosted Stormlance Task Force, a detachment that's already really quite competitive for the Space Marines, though more played at tournament level than elsewhere. Much of the detachment is fairly similar, though it has had a few small boosts. If Suboden Khan is in the army and he destroys a unit in the fight phase, you get to move 6 inches at the end of the fight phase, which might make it hard for the enemy to catch up with him again. The damage stratagem is slightly different. Any unit gets either lance or lethal hits in melee, which is quite nice for supporting wider Space Marine close combat, though mounted units get both. They still have the good reactive move and -1 to hit and wound mounted or fly units in the shooting phase. There's a return to reserves one, and just a plain shooting after advancing or falling back. Then for the enhancements, there's a reasonably nice damage dealer one, which is 25 points printed now, +1 strength and +1 AP, or +2 of each on the charge. That's not locked to mounted in this one. They've got a good shooting enhancement for sustained hits one and ignores cover for the bearers unit. That's just 20 points, and you could have a pretty seriously shooty squad of maybe Hellblasters with that, and they still have a version of Hunter's Instincts, so arriving from strat reserves early, and unlike most things it can combo with rapid ingress. Overall it does look like a solidly powerful detachment. Perhaps the main question is whether or not White Scar Stormlance and the twist to this one will quite outweigh what the Ultramarines can do with it with their powerful character datasheets. For the Iron Hands, we have the Terminator Captain in Caanok Var. He's 100 points for a tough Terminator character with 6 wounds and a 5+ feel no pain, so rather hard to bring down. In melee he attacks with Axiom, either with a Power Fist style profile or a sweep profile for 10 attacks at strength 5 and damage 1. He gets 3 really quite solid special rules, and then a fairly godly one in the Iron Hands unique detachment. Either lethal or sustained hits for his lead unit, lethal if he's attacking monsters or vehicles, which would normally be what you'd want anyway, or sustained hits if you attack anything else, which is just general purpose damage. Then his Cerebrex Logic Engine gives 1 unit scout 6 inches, it's an infantry unit and nominated at the start to declare battle formations, so I guess that might be before characters attach, so it might just have to be a non-attached infantry unit, which maybe limits its appeal, and then he gets to redeploy 1 unit, which can be quite nice with infiltrators. Say if you put scouts forward on the front line and then you could reposition them, it could be quite nice to make sure that your tanks are not going to get jumped by the enemy turn 1 as well. Overall for 100 points I think he's solidly efficient, maybe the biggest downside of him being that Terminators are rather mid right now. If that changes though, then he's going to be a very interesting unit indeed. He is rather excellent in the Hammer of Avernii though, and if you're running this detachment you'd absolutely want him. Weirdly enough, the Iron Hands got their boosted first company detachment rather than a different Ironstorm Spearhead take. Getting the same tweak to the core rule that the Imperial Fist did, re-rolling 1s to wound against the Oath of Moment target, so just doubling down on being absolutely devastating against one thing, and then after you've slain that, Caanok Var gets to redesignate the Oath target. That has to be something that's visible to him. I think I misunderstood that previously, and I thought that he could just be on the battlefield, but it seems that he's going to have to be at least somewhat aggressive and be getting lines of sight to enemy units. But I guess ultimately that's kind of what he wanted to do anyway, getting his nice buffing rules to work while hopefully safe behind a retinue of Terminators. Getting double boosted Oath of Moment is pretty excellent in the first place, never mind that this detachment also gets reroll 1s to wound as well, amping it up even further. I've seen some people being a bit apprehensive as to how hard Whirlwinds could hit in this detachment. He could have some pretty fearsome and next level indirect fire. Then for the stratagems, several of them were tweaked from the first company. The main change is the addition to Dreadnoughts as an option for targeting most of them, so it might be quite nice with a newer and cheaper Redemptor. There's a damage dealer one for either the Veterans, Termies or Dreadnoughts to get +1 to hit, and also +1 to wound if they're below starting strength. That's really not that hard to get the boosted rule of that, and that could be very easy to use. Particularly Dreadnoughts and Terminator units have got a good chance of being damaged but not outright destroyed and still have meaningful damage left. There's a sticky objectives one in the movement phase, either sustained hits or lethal hits in the fight phase, a -1 damage one after you've got charged. That applies to the Veterans or Terminators only, and there's a Terminator unit that can return to reserve if not in engagement range, which could help for them if they're out of position. Most of the enhancements are usable enough, a +1 attack and then a +1 attack to your whole unit once per game. That one feels reasonable enough. A battle shock that can kill models, an OC one that functions similar to the attacks one and could swing an objective on one key phase potentially, and then an interesting enough Terminator one replacing the big feel no pain one in first company. Still quite a good one though, as it allows you to resurrect Terminator models from the grave. Could be nice with a big massed up Terminator assault squad maybe. Overall I still feel like this one's got a fair bit of interest, just the sheer amount of damage output that you can get from the core rule with Caanok Var around feels like it's got to be at least kind of interesting. Some of the stratagems are quite good as well, maybe the biggest downside is being locked to a few very specific datasheets, and I feel like the detachment would also be significantly stronger if Terminators were one of the most fearsome Space Marine units. At present they just currently aren't. Then finally for the Iron Hands and White Scars we have some combat patrol rules for them. These ones are for the themed box sets with the new transfer sheets in them. The White Scars one is Suboden Khan, 3 Outriders and 5 Assault Intercessors in an Impulsor. They get Oath of Moment as their core rule. Suboden either gets his Move Through Terrain rule back or Sustained Hits 1, and their stratagems are a -1 to wound, infantry charging after disembarking, or boosted AP by 1 and gaining anti-vehicle or monster 4+ this phase, which kind of makes sense as there's not a lot in this one that can threaten tough stuff. The Iron Hands one is the Reducem readout. It was a bit of an unusual combat patrol box, this one, with 2 fire strike turrets, 10 heavy intercessors and a tech marine. Maybe useful if you wanted to add those units to your army that wasn't exactly received very well. In the combat patrol rules, it's Oath of Moment without the +1 to wound again. The tech marine can either have some boosted melee or be chosen to attach to heavy intercessors, and for stratagems there's a fallback and shoot, a sustained hits 1 for 1 marked targets for the infantry to shoot at, and there's a move 3 inches after shooting, so I guess you might be able to jump in and out of terrain with that. I quite like the way they actually used the Iron Hands tech marine for the artwork on the datasheet too. Then finally, the Harlequins combat patrol appears not to be in the downloads page. There does appear to be in the Warhammer 40K app. Their new one is called Kaleidoscopic Onslaught, getting stripped down battle focus with 3 options. The Solitaire can either blitz or get an extra agile maneuver, and they've got stratagems from -1 to wound in melee, a fallback shoot and charge, and a 2 command point to revive on death for a character at the end of a phase. That seems pretty enormous for the Solitaire. Seems pretty crazy to be able to access that at a 500 point game level. Nice enough to get those for those who want them. Just a shame that the combat patrol for Harlequins seems to have already been marked as out of stock in many places around the world. I felt like these new ones might be kind of short-lived, but looks like they didn't really make many of the Harlequins box set, perhaps not anticipating as many sales as they got. In any case though, let me know your thoughts as to the updates. I look forward to hearing any takes on the new Deathwatch veterans, Suboden Khan, Caanok Var, the 2 new detachments and all the Necrons. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Feel free to give a shout out to any other things that I might have missed in the roundup as well. It felt like a bit of a less obvious one, given that not all the changes appeared to have turned up in either one of their rule source places. If there's anything major I've missed or got wrong, I'll try to update it as a pinned comment. Hopefully I'll take a closer look at the Deathwatch veterans and maybe the Necrons datasheets as their own videos within the next 24 hours or so. So feel free to stay tuned or check back later if you'd like to see those. Thank you to ObjectiveMarkers.com for sponsoring this one. Feel free to check out the things linked down in the video description below if you would like some faction-specific objectives. They do have several different designs that can cover a wide range of armies, plus those generic Auspex designs as well. I'll leave that there for now though. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k rules coming, with new ones out just about every day. If you'd like to support the channel and keep the videos coming, Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well. If you'd like to support and help keep the videos coming, that's linked in the video description below. Channel patrons get a few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with the chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link's down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.